When God establishes a covenant, it's important to understand that a covenant goes both ways. Both parties have certain responsibilities in the agreement, and everybody has to keep their end of the deal. Now, we know that God is just and He is always going to keep His promises, but we have to keep our commitment to God as well and make sure that we always maintain the proper environment for God to move and work in our lives. And part of that is making sure that we connect with the right people. Everybody cannot fit into the plan of God. God will not accept just any old thing. So, anybody that we use or work with or get involved with or connect with in executing God's plan and maintaining our side of the covenant has to be someone that God accepts and God approves of. When we try to bring people that God rejects into the covenant, it causes problems. So that's what we see in the lesson today. We see Abraham, he understood how significant this covenant is and that his seed and his nations would impact the entire world. And so we see that he's getting things in order to make sure that he held or he kept his end of the deal of the covenant between him and God. Thank you so much for joining me for the Sanctuary Sunday School. This is the International Sunday School lesson, and the subject is the marriage of Isaac. And we can find this text in the 24th chapter of the book of Genesis. And so we see that we're moving right along, and we've been talking about God and Abraham and the covenant that he made. And Abraham was old, Sarah had died, and he was at a point in his life where he was already old when he gave birth to Isaac. So at this point, he's nearing death and he's setting things in order to make sure that his lineage continued properly. So now we see that Abraham finds a wife for Isaac. And once again, we see God stressing and reiterating the importance of marriage and how he it blesses through marriage. And so now it was important that Isaac had the right wife. So Abraham wanted Isaac's wife to come from his kinspeople, and that was quite challenging because, as we know, Abraham had left his home many years ago, but it was important that there was a blessing in the marriage of Isaac and his wife because the covenant, God told, as we learned last Sunday, God told Abraham that the covenant would be through his son Isaac. So Abraham sent out a servant to find a woman for Isaac. And this again could not be just any old woman. And he went and he looked. And so the servant, what I love about this is that the servant prayed to God. And it wasn't like, my master told me this, I'm just going to have to do it. No, he prayed because he knew that this was an important task and he wanted to make sure that he got this just right. And so he asked God, he asked God for a sign. And there's nothing wrong with asking God for signs because God will always reassure you and let you know when you're doing the right thing. And so he said, you're going to go down to the well. Now, at the well, you'll see a lot of times throughout the Bible meeting women at the well because it was a common gathering place where the women would go and draw water. So it says, I want to see this woman and I'm going to ask her for some water. And if this woman says to me that she's going to give me water, if she shares water with me, and then if she also will give water to my camels, then I will know that this is the woman that I am seeking. And so the servant went down there. And again, that's when he met Rebecca. And Rebecca was actually the granddaughter of Abraham's brother. And she was there and she did exactly what he had requested. And that's what I love about God because God will do exactly what you ask him to do. So she did that. She gave him some water and she gave his camels water as well. And it says the servant just looked at her and he marveled at her and just how God blessed them and how he had found it. And when you're on a mission and you're doing something for God and you accomplish that mission, there's this feeling like, yes, I did it, I got it. And it's not so much about me, but it's just a gratitude for the faithfulness of God and knowing that God heard you and knowing that God showed up for you and that your prayer was answered. And he saw Rebecca And Rebecca was described as fair. And also, when she was there, it says that she was there and she had her own maidens with her and she had her own camel. And this says something about me too, because it shows that Rebecca was just not some little shabby woman. And that is a very strong message to women about how, yes, the man is the head of the household and he has that accountability for being a provider. But as women, we have to bring something to the table and have quality and have substance. And it says she was just there going to get water. There was no tricks, there was no trap, there was no conniving, there was no manipulation. She was just there and she was just being beautiful and she was just doing what she was supposed to do. And that's when the servant saw her. And it says that she was a virgin. She was pure. She was not married. She was available and she was prepared for the mission that God had for her. And she went there that day and she was suitable. And again, that is such a powerful message to women today because, again, I said this a few weeks ago, society will tell you that you have to do all of these things and be all of these different kinds of ways in order to attract someone. But when you compromise your standards, what are you really attracting? There's a saying that I always say, if you have to not be who you are or compromise who you are to get what you want, is that really what you want? And so it says that Rebecca was there and she followed the servants. Now that was an act of faith. And it tells you right there that she was led by God as well because she met the servant at this well and she went and she followed him back to Abraham's land. And it says when she got to the land, she saw Isaac. Isaac got up to meet her. And when she saw him, she said, okay, who is this man? And then the servant told her, this is my master. And they met him and she became Isaac's wife. And as we know, that Rebecca did become a very key part in the development of the entire nation of Israel. And so this is just a very powerful lesson about the plan of God. God lays everything out so perfectly. And this is something I had to learn because by nature, I like to know what's going on. I like to know the plan from start A to start B. But God didn't really tell us to do that. God said to obey him. God said to trust him. And God has the plan. And so we look at this even with Abraham and the faith of Abraham and finding this wife for Isaac. And it just again reiterates how having that relationship with God, and not only did Abraham have the relationship, his servant had the relationship where he was able to ask God for a sign. And it doesn't indicate a lack of faith. It indicates a diligence. It indicates due diligence. And what that says to me is that even when God is with us and he has a covenant with us and he has made a promise to us, we have some accountability to do our homework, do your research. You can't just go out there, do anything any kind of way. God is a perfect God. So anything that we do for the Lord has to be done in excellence. Anyone that we connect to has to be a person of excellence. Again, like I said in the introduction, you can't just bring anybody into God's family. And yes, we do go out in the highways and the hedges and compel them to come. But when you're at this level where Abraham was, where he was building a nation that was going to bless the entire world, this woman, Rebecca, would be in the lineage of God's only begotten son, Jesus Christ. So this had to be a special vessel. And when I think about that, I love studying the women of the Bible because the idea of being a special vessel used by God to carry out God's plan. And it speaks again about the strength of women. And again, there's not really a reason for us as women to compete with men and vie for power over them because God has given us our own power in our own right. He's given us influence. He's given us beauty. He's given us class. He's given us elegance. And those are things that we can use. There's a saying that says, the hand that rocks the cradle rule the world. And sometimes when you look at this and we look at Rebecca stayed in the role that God placed her in. And again, Abraham was rich. She married into a rich family and she was very well taken care of. Does that mean that she didn't have any problems? No. But see, that's the thing I love about God. I never asked God not to make my way hard. I never asked him not to give me no problems. Because one thing that I do know, whatever comes my way, as long as I'm obeying God, he is going to bring me through it. And he's going to give me the strength to stand and the courage to make it through. So when we look at this and look at how God prepares people and he places people, there is always going to be what you need. And the end of this chapter says that Isaac found comfort in his wife. And after the death of his mother, and that's a lesson for Isaac, for as well, for us through Isaac as well, because there are times in your life where you're going to be hurt. There's going to be devastating things, but God always has something or someone right around the corner to minister to you, to lift you up. There's never a reason to feel like you're in despair and that you're hopeless and that things can't get better, because God always has someone there, especially if you are committed to the plan of God and if you're in covenant relationship with God. God will never allow you to be in a position where you cannot sustain your end of the agreement. He always provides. He always takes care of you. And anytime you need it, you can go to him, you can ask him, and he'll show you a sign. He'll give you what you need to make sure. And one thing that you always have to remember, that God always keeps his promises, and he is worthy of us being faithful and diligent and working and serving the Lord, because at the end of the day, our primary focus and concern and mission in life is to make sure that we fulfill the role that God has given us, to make sure that God's plan is executed flawlessly.